Hello everyone, this is Eric, and today I'm talking to Gáspár Nagy, who is a coach, a trainer, and a self-proclaimed BDD addict, if I'm correct. And he's a creator of SpecFlow, which is a framework to implement BDD. And today I wanted to ask Gáspár about not really about the second part of his professional life, but the first part. I'm really interested. I work in a 9-to-5 job, so-called. I'm just I'm a regular employee at a company, and I'm really interested and curious about how coaches and trainers, or let's say consultants, work, and that's why I'm asked Gáspár to talk about today. So let's start with the first question right away. My first question would be how does it practically look like? What happens exactly when you're at a client and working at them for a few days? You fly into them, I imagine, and I'm really curious about what happens there. How can you make an impact in a few days? That's why I have a bit of a hard time to imagine.
Okay. Yeah, welcome everyone, and I'm glad that we can have this conversation. When you have mentioned that you would like to talk about this, I was a little bit concerned because, I mean, probably there are people who are doing this for a much longer time than I do, but obviously I'm trying to answer these questions with my experience. So how does it look like to do a coaching? I think there is no general pattern to that, and just like everything, typically it requires some kind of preparation, some kind of planning. So whenever I have a coaching engagement with any of my clients, I mean, typically this is anyway connected with maybe a training that I'm delivering to them. So maybe this is part of the follow-up of that training. We are trying to agree on what is the most important pain points that they have, and that where I can help. I think the actual act when I'm sitting there and doing the stuff together with them is not much different than what people are doing in their company. So what happens if someone is asking you from the other room is that they are running into a trouble and they need a little bit of help from you. You just go there, try to understand the problem, and try to give some hints or whatever that you think that is helpful for that particular person. So it's not different from that, and in the majority of the cases, this actual coaching part is really like that, trying to work a little bit together with them, trying to understand their situation, and trying to find something that I had in my experience, and that could be helpful for them, trying to give some hints and ideas for that.
Mm-hmm. So I imagine that for them it's a big value that you as a coach, you've been around, seen many companies, you've met many problems probably, and through that maybe you can you have better insights that they didn't see before.
Yes, I mean, this has multiple aspects. So one thing is that sometimes it's easier or better to hear some ideas from someone who is an outsider. So if I'm going there and just sharing my thoughts with them, that I don't have to worry about the company culture. I don't have to be taking care of all the specific setup that they have, some internal politics or whatever like that. So I'm an outsider, and my opinions are somehow better objective. I mean, obviously they're not necessarily, but they might be looking like that. And but of course, it's also like that if you are in a situation, if you are in a project, and you are focusing on solving some problems that are important for you, then it's very hard to step back and see it from a different perspective. And if someone from outside, and especially one who has visited many companies and have seen maybe similar or different patterns around that, is looking at that and can give some hints that might be useful for them, and this is why I think this is valuable for them. Sometimes, on the other hand, I don't really have to. So sometimes what they are doing is the best that they can do. So sometimes I had a situation that I couldn't really give any better idea that what they have anyway figured out. In that case, this can be still valuable because this is a kind of verification or confirmation that where they are going is really good, and at least the general direction is okay. So I mean that kind of confirmation or that kind of information that can be also useful for them. But of course, in small little things, I can also usually I can give some hints or tell some stories that I find related to what they are doing, and that is something that they can hopefully use.
It's interesting that you mentioned. I heard two things. That one, that you, as an external person, you can be kind of an authority on, or maybe you have your words have a bigger impact because you're someone from outside. And you also said that you don't really need to take care of their internal, whatever is going on, and it's not needed.
So politics,
politics or maybe setups or stuff like that. Do you see this as my dilemma is right now is a kind of a trade-off? My question is about like how to make an impact, and I see the first trait as an advantage for leaving impact, that you can be some sort of preacher in the room, and because of the second thing, maybe that's a struggle. Because you're there for a few days and then you leave. Is there is this a trade-off? How do you see this?
Yeah, I understand. So I mean, I was more or less doing this even before I started my own business. So in the company where I was working, I was in a kind of coach position. So I was just helping different teams, and I had short engagements with them, and generally they were working alone. But of course, there I had a better overview of what's happening, and I could see what is the result of our discussion. I think the trade-off is that in this case, obviously, I cannot see the full story. I cannot be there when they finally, hopefully, make a success. But on the other hand, this way I can be contacted. I can be engaged with many different companies. So I get more information, but I'm less consistently there with them when they are hopefully celebrating at the end. So I think this is the trade-off for me. That it's for, at least for me, it's interesting to see how different teams are working and what kind of problems do they have, and what kind of solutions they have figured out, and generally these things are interesting. One thing that was coming to my mind when we had this discussion is that for me as a coach, generally it's very, very important that I'm not there to solve their problem. This sounds maybe really strange, but my goal is that they find the solution themselves. It's a very, very different distinction. So if I'm just there and maybe just not even saying anything, but just asking good questions that helping them to find their own solution, that's probably the best outcome that we can imagine, because then they feel that this is theirs, and they have achieved something, and I'm also happy that I could help them to achieve that.
Mm-hmm. I thought about, let's zoom out a bit. You mentioned that even before you formed your company, your one-man company, if I'm correct, sort of, yeah. You were doing similar things, so that gave me the thought. How did you start out? How would you start out? Maybe if it needs to be today, but maybe the two questions can overlap.
Yes, yeah. I think this is a very interesting question, and I get this question from many people that, okay, how, if they want to do something similar, how they should start. And I don't think that I have started this. I think this thing has found me, and I just got to this path somehow. Just happened like that. As I said, I was doing similar things at the company where I was working for, and I think this is a very good practice. And because no one really knows whether you could be really a good coach or not, or whether this is giving you enough joy and satisfaction. But within the company, it's a safe zone to try this out. And typically, you don't even have to give up all your fixed projects. And in every good company, there is a chance to help other teams and building up some such kind of expertise or something like that, an expert pool in some companies there. And then you can see how this works and whether it works for you or not. Also, in many companies, there are opportunities to make in-house trainings. In-house trainings are also very, very good practice to see whether you like this style or not. There are some people who like to do trainings, but it's not for everyone because it has a different setup, and you have to manage quite tricky situations as well sometimes, and it's also very exhausting in some sense. So I think you need to have somehow a feeling whether this story is your story or not. And if you have that, then you can try to step out and then start your own business. I don't really know what is the good way to do or the best way to do that. When I decided to start my own business, first of all, I already had this experience, so I've seen that, okay, this is something that I like and I can be good at. And I was also asking some of my friends who are more working in this direction about their advice. And basically, everyone was summarizing their advices in a way that, first of all, you have to be very patient, and because things will take long, and you shouldn't give up too early. So this is the advice number one that I get. And the other was that you need to figure out a way how to bootstrap your business. So you have to have some initial income. Just going out to the wild and trying to wait until such an engagement will find you, or finding one is very, very hard. So if you have a client, or if you have a potential client that can give you some initial job or initial engagement, even if it's not exactly what you want to do, but maybe it's a short-term project where you can also coach, but also participate in the development, for example, if you are a developer, something like that. So that gives you enough money to have some buffer, and also time to learn how you can find your clients and how they will find you at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, starting out small within your own company is definitely sounds like a good way to go.
Of course, in the beginning, it makes sense to take care of the cost. So for me, unfortunately, we had an extra room in our apartment, so I could use this as my office. I was just minimizing any investment in the beginning until I had my first engagements, and so that make an environment that you can fail safely and change your mind.
Yeah, your background gave me an idea. I see that you have work related things set up in your home office, let's say. Let's talk about. Give us an idea how does your weekdays or everydays look like? I imagine that you don't have from Monday to Friday. How does your weekly or monthly schedule looks like, and how does a coaching session that you do, like fit into this? How does it look like in practice?
Yeah, this is also very interesting, and I also didn't know how this will work before I started. So altogether, I think I work more than if I would have an 8-hour job. So if you are, I'm in the 3rd year now. So definitely, if whoever is starting with such kind of thing, you have to be prepared that you will work a lot. And on the other hand, this work is not so much structured like from the time point of view like normally. So it's not from typically not from 8 to 5, but you have more flexibility that you can use the benefits of. So, for example, I have a family here with 3 kids, and with all the different logistical and other issues that you have with that, I can use this flexibility. So whenever I feel very tired in the morning, then maybe I skip the afternoon and just be with the kids, or just take them from the kindergarten and continue working after they went to sleep. So and I don't really have to discuss it with anyone. I can just make an ad hoc decision just before 1 p.m. when we have to take them from the kindergarten. I say that, okay, I need a little bit of fresh air, then I just go out. So it's much more different and much more flexible, at least when I'm here at home. But altogether, it sums up to that. You were asking whether I'm a one-person company. Actually, it's almost true, or it was true for a while. Now my wife is working for me, or we are working together, which makes also a big difference, because from many different perspectives, obviously, she can help me a lot with many things that you have if you are running a company. But also it's very good that I have someone who I can discuss the strategical decisions with, and we can make a better decision together. So that's also helping me. So you also need to have someone who you can talk your problems and your challenges with, because sometimes you are maybe just struggling too much with making a decision, and if you have someone who you can discuss it with, then things become much more easier. So yeah, my weekly plan, I don't have a very strict weekly plan. Let's say that I'm not at the client on a week, then typically I have a backlog of things to do, making proposals, answering emails, preparing some sales related material, taking care of Twitter, taking care of LinkedIn, and preparing for my upcoming trainings or upcoming conference talks. So this is taking me the majority of the time. I also try to find time to make some development as well, because I don't want to be fully detached from coding and software development. So I'm also trying to work on SpecFlow time to time. I also have some small tools that I'm developing, that I can still verify my own thoughts and ideas also in practice. I also last year, and also this year, we were working on a book. So if I have a little time, then I also can also work on the book. I'm doing this BDD Addict newsletter, which is also taking some time to edit. So many different small things that I have. I think the bigger chunks are for the preparations for the conference talks. I like to be well prepared, so I'm spending even too much time on that. But for a typical 45 minutes talk, I spend at least 3 days to prepare for. So sometimes even a week. And similar to a training, of course I have some generic training material, but if I'm doing a training with a client, I like to customize it, that it should really fit to their concrete needs. So I need to always think it over, what would be the best focus for them, and also even changing the training material, and also keeping it up to date. I'm really interested to learn about how to do trainings better and better. So I'm really interested in the feedback that they give, and the other news and other things that I hear from other trainers, what kind of techniques they are using, and I'm trying to trying them out and see how they work for me or not.
Now I remember from our earlier talks that you mentioned that you're based in Hungary, in Budapest, but you mainly work abroad. So I imagine that's also a lot of time traveling. Whenever you're actually out there, you need to travel there, and is it that's correct? I guess.
Yes. So I didn't check the figures for last year, but 2 years ago I was counting it, and I was away for 100 days in a year. So which is pretty much. Maybe last year it was a little bit less, but yes, it's a lot of traveling. I think it depends on the kind of topic that you are focusing on. I focus on BDD. BDD is a narrow topic, so Hungary doesn't. I mean, in Hungary we have a lot of IT companies, but it's not big enough for having enough engagements for me. So yeah, so I mainly do my things in Europe, sometimes in the US, and yes, this requires a lot of traveling, and also conferences are also a significant portion of my traveling time. Because generally conferences are very, very important for me also to get new ideas and see what people are struggling with. But it's also a kind of sales tool as well. So just I have to be there. I have to show myself. Otherwise, people will not find me. So I'm doing at least 6 conferences a year. I don't know. I didn't count them, but it feels like a lot.
That's another nice tip, I imagine, to be kind of starting out or doing it. That you need to be seen, and I think that's probably connects to the question of how do you find each other with the clients or engagements. That's one way, I imagine, that they come up to you, and because you have built a certain reputation. Does it happen that you make a proposal out of thin air, let's say, or that doesn't happen anymore?
That doesn't really work, I would say. So I've tried that in the beginning for a few times. So I was just contacting some people who I knew that they were struggling with problems that I'm offering solutions for, and trying to make some contact with them. But I think it never worked. It's a very bad position if you are trying to sell something like. Then you are like an agent who want to sell stuff, and you have to explain why this is so good and what kind of benefits you have. On the other hand, if they find you, then it's much easier, because then they probably have reviewed, probably they have checked who else is offering similar services. For some reason, they have found my work interesting. They have contacted me. Typically, they are not contacting only one person, but maybe they are asking some proposals from multiple different coaches or trainers. They make an evaluation afterwards. So altogether, this is the only way, at least in the style how I work, so that I don't have I know that some people are working in a way that they have 1 or 2 clients and they get regular requests from them. That's probably a little bit different, but for me, I have many clients with smaller engagements. So in this way, I think this is the only way that works, that they find you. Mm. But I don't know how it happens. So I was trying to figure out some assumptions that, okay, if I'm just sending out business cards after my conference talk, then something will happen. I don't know. I was never able to trace it down what kind of channel was reaching those people who were finding me. I think for me, my strategy is that you have to do many different channels, and then some of them will land in the good place.
Mm-hmm. Probably one of my last questions would be to get super practical. I'm not sure if you can answer this actually, but could you describe us like through an example of your last engagement, what exactly happened there, and what was the problem, as deep as you can explain it, that you were called in? It doesn't need to be the last one, of course, but something concrete. So we would go down on the abstraction level. Is this something that you can answer?
I think about a good example. It will be not a very, very concrete, but I'm trying to make it as concrete as possible. So as I said, for me, typically the engagement is starting with the training. So typically those companies that are finding me are either new to BDD and maybe SpecFlow, or they have practiced BDD and SpecFlow for a while, but they are not satisfied with or they think that they can, they now understand the basics, but they want to do it better. So, and this is when they try to find some training opportunities, and just trying to make a concrete. Let's say that I was working with a company and they were using BDD and SpecFlow for a small portion of the project, and they have seen that this is generally good, and they wanted to roll it out to the entire product or whatever, to multiple teams. And they thought that, okay, this would be a good time, because this means that the many people have to be trained. And of course, these people who were doing this pilot project could train them, but if they have made a mistake, then they are just spreading that mistake out. So that's probably not so good. And this is when they were calling me in. So in the training, I was able to train the entire product team. And during that training, it turned out that we were also be able to identify those things that the pilot team was doing well, and it was absolutely fine. And we have also identified some problems that could be improved. Typically, the problems are, at least in BDD, typically the problems are related on about how they do the collaboration part of BDD. So who is writing these feature files, who is writing these scenarios, and how do they write these scenarios, and then try to find the right level of abstraction and right way of writing the scenarios is a typical problem. So after we identified that, and we were anyway having an agreement that we have some additional coaching days to that. Basically, after that, we were using that coaching days partly for doing example mapping sessions, so a little bit practice how they can do collaboration on their own domain. So they were basically taking the next user story that they anyway have to work on, and they were trying to do this kind of collaboration exercise that they have learned in the training. But I was also there, and I was watching them, so I could help them out if they were stuck into some challenge in the discussion. And afterwards, we could make a retrospective to see, okay, what was good, what could be improved, and things like that. And in the other half of the coaching time that we agreed on, I was basically doing a code review together with them on their existing code base. And this was more or less looking like a typical code review. So we were just a code walkthrough and a code review. So we were going through the code. We have identified maybe some things that could be done better. We were even doing some prototyping so that how this could be solved. And this was with a smaller, like 4 or 5 people, so a small group. And this is how we have used this coaching time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I think we are reaching the end of the interview. Let's wrap up with you a little bit. What is the best way to contact you if someone wants to reach out to you?
Yeah, I think the best way is to contact me per email. Altogether, I have found that this is the most reliable way. So my email address is. We will write it on the screen, I think, because otherwise the strangely spelled Hungarian names are hard to write it down. But actually, it's Gáspár at Specsolutions.eu, this is my email address, this is the best way to contact me. But generally, if someone is just going to my website, which is specsolutions.eu, then you will find all my contact information, also my phone number, and yeah, this is the easiest way to get in touch.
Perfect. Yeah, and I also heard that you did recently an interview on Test Talks. It was mostly about your actual work that you're doing and about your new book. So I'm going to include that link in the some kind of description or on the screen as well. Because today we wanted to focus on the on your
book is a big topic, and we could talk about that for a long time.
Yeah, I imagine it's called Discovery, and it's recently out.
Yes, and I hope
you have a copy around you. I thought that's a physical copy is not a thing anymore, but
it is absolutely. I mean, this is not a real copy, but just the test print
pilot.
One of the this was the pilot copy. Yes, people like to have physical books, and it's especially for such a, I don't know. I mean, I think everyone is probably having different reading preferences, but what we wanted to do with this book is to make it very short, that just take it on your next business trip. You don't have to, your backpack will be not super heavy by putting that in, and typically during an average flight, like 1.5 hours, you can read it through. So that was our goal, which looks like that we managed to do.
Okay, that makes sense. Great. Thank you very much again, Gáspár, and see you everyone around, and talk to you later, hopefully. See you in the conferences.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.